no breakfast, baby. You run the street both night and day. But here, one thing, pretty baby, I really want you to know. If I live now 100 years, and I can't do that no more. Somebody, yeah, understand me, baby. Somebody's got to pay.
Yeah, that's right. Somebody's got to pay, right? That's Jimmy Wolf, and that's somebody's got to pay. Hey, welcome to Let's Talk Native. It is October 30th, Monday, October 30th, and welcome to Let's Talk Native on the LTN Radio Network. This program breaks all the rules for Native radio. No buffalo speeches, no mystic healing, no special Indian prayers. We tackle the real issues facing Native people with a look back at our glorious and our grave history, a tough look at where we're at now, and a look forward to our ongoing battles for sovereignty and autonomy. Let's Talk Native is produced in association with Iroquois Promotions on the LTN Radio Network, streaming live from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation, and simulcast and rebroadcast on the Gwe, CKWE in Tandanega. You can find us at www.ltnradionet.com. And, of course, you can find us streaming live on Facebook. We are Facebook Live as we speak. And of course, if you don't catch the show live, we'll have the show posted on my Let's Talk Native group page. And then by tomorrow, we'll have this thing posted on our Let's Talk Native YouTube channel. And you can catch the show there as well. Look, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to talk with you folks as I do twice a week here and once a week usually from New York. And got a couple of things to talk about. And like I said, it seems like we're always talking about somebody having to pay. And the question is, who's got to pay, and what are they paying for? Well, believe it or not, I'm not going to talk too much today about the ongoing battle between the Senecas and New York State over gaming. I'm going to talk about something else. There is another problem brewing between the Senecas and the state, and this is an issue that needs to be readdressed anyway, and that's the thruway that passes through Seneca territory. There's about an 8-mile stretch of it that goes through that traverses the Seneca territory, and if you're wondering how that came to be, it came to be through coercion, through fraud, and through absolutely being screwed by the state. And, it goes back to the 50s. But, at the end of the day, the state didn't acquire that land. First off, let's be clear. The land that the thruway cuts across is Seneca land. And there's no question about that. What the state acquired was an easement. And so, again, only an easement. They did not acquire the underlying title of the land. And to be clear, the underlying title of Seneca land is not New York State. And in fact, it's not the United States. And there is language in treaties like Canandaigua. Not a big fan of the thing, but the language is clear that was created and crafted and drafted by white people, by Washington and his crew, and acknowledged by the state for a couple of centuries, that the land of the Senecas is not a part of the United States, and the United States will never claim the same. That's the language. So now I've got that clear. But the state did acquire an easement, and they did it through some really coercive. I hate to even use the word negotiations. They essentially got the easement from the Senecas, at least the nation land, for like $70,000, and then they kind of boasted about the fact that we sure got it from them for cheap. And, the Senecas, at the time that the thruway was being put through and they knew it was going to be a toll road, they said, well, then we're entitled to some of the tolls. And the state said, no, you don't get that. And, of course, we're talking about a time where Native people were still being oppressed overtly, not just, subtly, put it that way. So, the Senecas weren't exactly in the strongest position to fight the state on this thing. So the thruway goes through, and of course, when the thruway was put through, it wasn't supposed to be a toll road forever, but it turns out it was a toll road forever. And the state has collected billions of dollars in tolls from the thruway. And again, a major portion of this throughway cuts through, you know, an 8 mile stretch that connects Buffalo to all points west. It goes through Seneca territory. And so now, when we think about the throughway, it isn't just the tolls, keep in mind. We're talking about billions, let me take it back, trillions of dollars worth of commerce that flow on this interstate highway, this toll road. And not just the tractor trailers and, you know, and the small common carriers and all that other stuff. I mean, there is commerce being conducted by every shopper, every consumer, everybody who's traveling across those roads. Now, the other thing you got to say about interstate traffic in general is that the interstates are not good for local economies. No, they really aren't. What interstates do is they connect cities. That's the function. I mean, the purpose of an interstate is to connect urban areas to urban areas and to bypass all those secondary roads. That's the, you know, you create a highway so you can travel as fast as you can to get to the next, you know, the next destination point. Interstates in general, not just toll roads, but interstates in general are economy killers for local, you know, for local communities. They destroy local economies, and you can see examples of this, and there's been stories and movies, and I mean, even the animated movie Cars was about that, right? Route 66, right? Now they run the interstate by, and in these little towns they just die. So that's just kind of the facts of this kind of urban planning. Urban planning is about bypassing, you know, rural communities. That's what it's for, right? So now having said all that, what's the throughway issue? Well, the one issue is clearly the Senecas got screwed back when the easement was acquired in the first place, and you know, there has been an interest expressed over the years to revisit the relationship with New York State and the Thruway Authority. That conversation doesn't take place, and then it gets political. And we can go back a few years. I mean, back when, you know, Cuomo was Cuomo was the governor. I think Robert Porter was the president of the Senate Commission, and their relationship was really bad. And Cuomo tried to redirect federal highway transportation funds away from doing some of the necessities that this interstate, the Interstate 90, as well as Interstate 86 down in the southern tier that goes through the Allegheny territory. But there are two bridges and, you know, and more, but there are two bridges that are on the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation that cross the thruway. And they were in such bad repair. There were chunks of those bridges falling onto the thruway. I mean, chunks of rust. And I mean, they literally had these things propped up with wood. And I say that because, you know, we walked underneath it. We took a look at some of this stuff. It was crazy how bad what the condition was. I mean, there's chunks of concrete and rust and all kinds of, they're just literally falling off the bottom of these bridges. And, you know, so finally, Governor Cuomo got it handed to him from, you know, the federal government, saying, you don't get to decide how these funds are implemented. This is to fix these bridges and this highway. So anyway, the bridges finally did get fixed. But I tell you, they were in a dangerous condition when they finally got fixed. So what happened this past week, and frankly, I wasn't even that aware of the story brewing in the way that this one did. What happened this week was Channel 2 and maybe even some of the other mainstream media outlets here in Western New York raised the question, why was the 8-mile section of the thruway that crosses the Seneca territory the worst section of the New York State thruway system? Why was it in such bad shape? Why is the road in such terrible shape? And so the logical, you know, answer or one of the responses, I guess, was, is this being tied to the governor being vindictive again? Because he was the last time we went through this mess was during the debacle over the state's breaching of the compact, and money was being held back then, and that's when the governor was trying to let the bridges go to hell. So now the question is the governor trying to up the ante about the things that he thinks he can do to impact Seneca life considering that the state is desperate for money and is hoping to pull $150 million a year out of Seneca territory. So that was the question. This isn't even an issue that we brought to the table. This actually came to us. So as these stories got posted, this is where the story goes from like bad to worse. Man, some of the racist comments that were coming out. I mean, some of the things that people were saying. Finally, actually, somebody, one of the folks who listen to the show and see some of the stuff they write, they tagged me in it. And they said, "John Kane, would you please enter this conversation?" So I did. So again, I had to revisit some of the obvious issues, and among those obvious issues is the Thruway wasn't built for us. But what was being said as a result of this question about the Thruway being in disrepair, there were some really racist people saying things like, screw the Indians, F the Indians. If they want to be so sovereign, let them maintain the roads themselves. Let's see them fix it themselves. If they want to claim so there was all this vitriol being spewed about how we're not really sovereign and that it's a joke and that we're just, everything from wards of the state to, all these challenges. And then a few threats. Well, let's just shut the Thruway down. Well, you know what? We used to do that. We used to shut the Thruway down. And the reason we did it was to inflict some pain on the state. It wasn't about inflicting pain on ourselves. We didn't shut the Thruway down to hurt ourselves. And here's the reason it was effective. Because the Thruway isn't built for us. We don't even travel that length of the Thruway. We don't jump on the Thruway to travel 8 miles across the Cattaraugus territory of the Second Nation. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. The only time we use the Thruway is when we're heading away. I mean, when we're heading to Buffalo or heading to, heading points east or points west. I mean, I'm not saying we never take that stretch of the way. If we happen to be in Irving and you jump on the Thruway there to travel to Buffalo, yeah. But we don't use it to travel within our territory. We only use it when we're going someplace to spend money in your commerce stream. I mean, and there's no question about that. The road wasn't built for us. It was built for you. You, the white people. You, the non-natives. It was built so you could bypass our territory, so you could drive by and almost pretend we don't exist. That's what interstates do. It wasn't built for us. And you know what it was built for? It was built to make money for the state. And it was built to encourage the state's economy. Not the local economy, but the state and the national economy. It was built so people could just fly by. When this Thruway, when we've shut the Thruway down before, it was great for our economy. We had people traveling Route 20 going through it right by our businesses. If that Thruway wasn't there, our smoke shops, our convenience stores, our bingo hall, every business we have along Route 20 and Route 5, every one of them would be booming. I mean, that Thruway doesn't help us. It's there for you. I mean, and if you don't understand that, then you're clueless to begin with. So when I hear all this racist vitriol being, look, there were a lot of conversations, and basically I had people asking me, please, would you weigh in on this stuff? And I did, and I did weigh in. But you know what? The Senecas, for all those people saying, why don't the Senecas maintain the road? I'll tell you what. Let the Senecas take that road back and put a toll booth up, put a couple of travel plazas on either side of that thing, and you know what? That 8-mile stretch will be the best stretch of road on the interstate. It'll be the nicest road on Interstate 90. It'll be the nicest road in the whole New York State Thruway system. And yeah, Senecas will maintain it. 8 miles of highway. How expensive can it be? But see, here's what you don't understand. All of the roads that go through our territories, we didn't put them there, and they weren't for us. Even Route 5, Route 20, 438, it was all for you to get from point A to point B. Well, the main road that goes through the Cattaraugus territory of Seneca Nation, Route 438, there's a reason your folks, why the state wanted that highway in there, is because it runs along, they like to run roads along flat areas like the Cattaraugus Creek. that was the best place to run a road that would run in from from the lake inward to Gowanda and points east. Those roads weren't built for us, and that's why it's the state's obligation to maintain them. And and make no mistake about it, your commerce is conducted through on these highways as much as ours. Yeah, yeah, some of you shop in our shops and that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, the biggest culprits for speeding on the main drag going through the Cattaraugus territory, you know who it is? The corrections officers speeding for their shift change to go to work at the Gowanda prisons. There's more incidences of those guys hitting somebody, kids on bikes, flying through. I mean, it's only 45-mile-an-hour speed zone, but you can bet those guys are speeding through at 60+ miles an hour, and they never get ticketed. They never get ticketed, even on the slim chance that a county sheriff or a state police officer pulls one of them over. Once they realize, oh, you're a correction officer, okay, but hey, slow it down. They'll give them more leeway on these driving infractions than if they happen to pull a native person over. It turns into a battle. You got a guy like Matt's got to go fight the jurisdictional issues over a speeding ticket. I mean, it turns into a major battle for us, or we just pay it. So, and the crazy part about ticketing on our lands is that the money for those tickets doesn't come to our territories. So if we are being violated, if the residents on the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation or any native territory are being placed in jeopardy because of poor driving or unsafe driving or driving violations, there's nothing that comes back our way. It goes to the county. It goes to the closest town court, which is part of one of the other issues. But no, for all of you again who have this twisted idea that somehow we are taking advantage of the state, you just have to turn it down a little bit. And I realize that some of you guys aren't just ignorant; you're willfully ignorant. You choose to have this racist view of Native people. It's the same kind of people that weigh in on the casino issue and say, "Well, damn it, if the state gave them casinos, then they got to pay the state." I mean, that's the view. If the state gave them roads, no, that's not the way it works. And I mean, this is the problem with this racist view. And you know where does this racist view come from? It's top down, folks. This is the stuff that gets bred from the president of the United States to the governor of the state of New York, and every politician, every police officer, and some of our people get caught into it too. They actually will buy into it a little bit. They'll believe it. I mean, that's how the state managed to get the access, the easement for that throughway property from the Senecas in the first place. The Senecas felt vulnerable and weak, and that's why the state got it for $70,000. But just like the Senecas are standing up to this issue with the state trying to squeeze them for gaming dollars, there is the Senecas aren't going to take this from the state. They just aren't. And I'm talking about the people and the governance. Now the era of complacency is over. That idle no more thing. No, we aren't. We aren't idle. We're idle no more. We're going to stand up. We're going to stand up against racism. We're going to stand up against exploitation. And and for all of you who have this racist or hateful view towards our people, then just stay the hell away. Travel your bumpy throughway and get your asses from one end of our territory to the other, and don't look back. We don't need you in our lives. And for you to weigh in with your racist vitriol the way you've done, and call our people down the way you do. I mean, that says more about you than it does anything. There's nothing that any of you ignorant fools spewing off this racist vitriol can do or say that's really going to affect our lives. Unfortunately, what you're affecting is the people around you. It's what you're teaching your kids. It's a statement you're making. Every one of you morons who hang a Confederate flag outside your porch in upstate in Western New York. I mean, look, that flag doesn't do a damn thing to me, but it tells me something about you. Every one of you with your big Trump flags hanging out in front of your houses, it doesn't do a damn thing to me, but it tells me plenty about you. And of course, we got Facebook, right? We got Facebook, and we got every forum associated with the the TV stories, the news channels, and of course the forums that are associated with the print media. And we get to see it all. We got to see how people weighed in over things like the Lancaster High School changing its name and all of that racist vitriol. We get to hear all the stuff that gets said relating to gaming dollars, and now this Thruway story. I mean, let me take a step back away from this. What I gotta say is, thank you for inviting me into the conversation. And you know who you are. I didn't have permission to name you, so I won't name you. And this is what I ask of you who listen. Those of you who listen to the program, who watch me on Facebook, who see the stuff that I write. Keep me involved. If there's something you want me to weigh in on, then send me a message. Facebook message me. Tag me in a story, because I'm not going to catch it all. There's a lot to keep up with, man. There's a lot to keep up with. So tag me, and and I do. I've got several people, not just here locally, but several people in New York City and other places, nationally, who, when they see a story, they'll say, sometimes they won't even ask me to win. They'll just tag me. They'll just put John Kane on the story. So then I'll look at it and I say, okay, I got to weigh in. So then I'll type away and I'll put some, I'll offer a thought or an opinion. I'll certainly address, at least with a couple of shots, some of the racist viewpoints that are expressed, because I think it's important, because a lot of these guys will grab onto absolute misinformation. They'll twist numbers around, or they'll find one of these fake news sites, that spin these conspiracy theories and that kind of stuff, and they'll post that stuff and say, yeah, see, this is what this is all about. Really, no, what this is about is you being a racist moron. And when you spew all these facts of that what you claim to be facts, and it turns out, if I use Snopes or any other there are a couple of other sites that I use to verify some of the stuff that gets posted. I'll admit, I get caught every once in a while. Every once in a while, I might share a story or like or comment on a story that turns out to have been false. And when I learn that, I try to make some sort of correction. But I also try to be careful about what I do. If there's something really outrageous, it's kind of like, what was the didn't somebody say something about one of these politicians saying that Native Americans should go back to Nativia or something, some stupid thing like that. I mean, of course I didn't buy into that. So, but there's some really stupid things that people post. But I appreciate those of you who not only who step up yourselves, but for those of you who want me to weigh in. I'm certainly willing to do that, and not because I can weigh in better than anybody else, but I don't mind being another voice that can respond without getting too emotional. The problem is some of the stuff that gets said is pretty hateful and pretty hurtful. So it's easy for us to just get angry and then just respond with out of anger instead of us responding with an intelligent response. So and I try to be careful with that. So hey, we're getting close to the bottom of the hour. So let me one of the reasons, again, I ran Jimmy Wolf's song at the beginning of the show is because Jimmy's coming to town. But let me kind of give you, I got a couple of good artists coming to town, so let me go through it again. This Saturday, November 4th, Indigenous is coming to the Bear's Den at the Seneca Niagara Casino, and they will feature. They will have Logan Stats joining them. So, in fact, I'm gonna play a first an Indigenous song when we go to break here, and then when we go out at the end of the show, I'll go out with a Logan Stats song. But I open the show with Jimmy Wolf, and Jimmy Wolf will be playing the following Saturday. That's November 11th. So November 4th, 8 p.m. at the Bear's Den. That's Indigenous and Logan Stats. And then the following Saturday, November 11th at 8 p.m., Blackfoot and Jimmy Wolf will be playing at the Bear's Den at the Seneca Niagara Casino. And and again, just these guys are just great artists. I mean, these guys are really really good. Um, if you sometimes don't know what to do with the weekend, and and we can get into a rut, and I'm as guilty as anybody getting into a rut. Trust me, my wife's quick to remind me. Um, get out there, just go to see a show. I mean, and the Bears Den is it's the tickets are relatively inexpensive. You can get out there and you can see some great native artists that you're not going to hear on the radio. I mean, you might hear them on my show, but that's it. You're not going to hear these guys unless you see them live. And it is so hard for these guys to break through in the mainstream music industry, and it's not for lack of talent. So again, I wanted to, I just really need to promote these guys. I feel strongly about it. It's why I feel I support the Native American Music Awards and the Native American Music Association so much, and frankly, all of the Indigenous awards shows and all of those groups that acknowledge and pay tribute and give awards to Native artists. I appreciate all of them because it's a tough business, and again, the mainstream media, including entertainment, is controlled by a handful of people, and not always the nicest people either. So you gotta. I feel strongly about recommending these artists. Again, Indigenous and Logan Stats this Saturday, November 4th, at the Bears Den at the Seneca Niagara Casino, and then next Saturday. In fact, I'm going to get Jimmy Wolf to join me next Monday. He's going to join me on the show. We'll talk about kind of what he's been up to. It's been a while since I caught up with Jimmy, so we'll have him on the show next Monday, and then he'll be performing November 11th with Blackfoot at the Seneca Niagara Casino. So I wanted to mention that. Got a couple minutes. A couple of things. A few things I need to acknowledge. Dennis Banks passed away yesterday, and it's kind of a strange thing to think that Leonard Peltier has outlived all of these famous AIM guys. I'm not even sure how to wrap my head around that one. I mean, serving life sentence in prison, and yet he manages to outlive all of these guys. And I have some of my indifference associated with AIM, especially as it relates to somebody like Anime Akwash. But I figure I do feel necessary for me to acknowledge that Dennis Banks passed away. He is like many of these guys became iconic individuals within the Native resistance movement, I guess, and certainly the American Indian movement. So I want to acknowledge that Dennis is passing. Now, another person who passed away, and I'll mention this just briefly. I had a story run in the Niagara Reporter. I didn't even know that it ran. What they had done was they ran an opinion piece I had offered on Facebook, and then they offered it in their print medium as an opinion piece. And then a reporter for the Reporter, Mike Hudson, wrote a story quoting from that piece that I had written, and so I became aware of it, and I reposted it. I said, well, I guess I should share this since I practically wrote it, because I had a lot of my quotes in it. And then I learned several hours later that Mike Hudson passed away. Now, Mike Hudson is a guy who, a very, interesting character. But he was a punk artist at one time, and he was had a lot of his. He wrote it and was published in everything from Time to Hustler to I think Rolling Stone. I mean, and of course he wrote articles for the Niagara Reporter. And but as it turns out, the last article he wrote was based on my writing. So I guess we collaborated on his last article. Again, rest in peace, Dennis Banks, and rest in peace, Mike Hudson. Sorry to hear about your passing, and somebody who's been a voice for Niagara Falls for many years. You certainly will be missed. Look, okay, we'll take a break here. Let me see. Let's we'll go out with an indigenous piece here. So we'll do this, and we'll be right back.
I was feeling so
All right, that's a little bit of indigenous that's in my sights. I just figure I give you a taste of that. That's what you can expect if you go to the show this weekend. And they're a real hard rocking band. They've got a great sound. I had a chance to see them play at one of the NAMO Awards a couple of years ago, and they they were really kicking it. So you'll hear that music and that band, as well as have an opportunity to hear Logan Stats, who is a little bit more of a, I guess, more like an indie sound, I guess. And we'll go out with his Simple Man at the end of the show. Hey, look, I want to acknowledge my sponsors, but I want to thank Ross and Holly John and the RJE family of businesses. I want to thank Eric White and ERW Enterprises. I want to thank my good friends like Ed Schindler and Cynthia Trice and Neville Spring and Sugar Montour and the Seneca Nation for supporting the work that I do, and helping me help you, I guess, and help you by providing some of the information and providing a Native perspective. And I want to be careful saying that. I by no means suggest that I represent the Native voice. I represent a Native voice, and I do try to empower people with not only my perspective, but the facts that I use to generate my perspective. So, and again, you can question, my deductions. You can question my facts. But when it turns out that facts are facts, and they don't change just because they come out of my voice. So, anyway, I want to make sure that people understand that. I also want to thank Unity Stream and Apache Radio Net for providing our streaming. I want to thank CKWE, as I mentioned at the beginning, for both the simulcast and rebroadcast. And I also want to mention and thank Netroots Radio, Real People's Media, and Indigenous Resistance Radio for carrying the program. And, of course, I want to thank all of you who share the program, share the YouTube videos that Jake and I work on, who share the articles that I write, the letters to the editor, all of that stuff. The posts and the memes and all the stuff that I share on my Facebook group pages, which I have two of them. I have Let's Talk Native with John Kane, and I have Let's Talk with John Kane. Let's Talk Native, obviously, is the group page associated with this show, and Let's Talk with John Kane is the Facebook group page associated with my show in New York. I share a lot of information back and forth between those two groups because there are some different people. Some people are on both, but some are on one or the other, and I think it's important that I reach out. But these are open pages as well. So these group pages, if you want to become a group member, you just ask and I'll sign you up. And as long as you're not representing a terrorist group or selling underwear, you're welcome to be a part of the group. And I look forward to the posts and the comments and the memes, the links that people put up there, and that's part of the conversation that we need to have. That's part of the conversation that I want to encourage. But look, one thing is clear. I'm going to voice my opinion on the things that I see, not just on my posts and other people's posts as well. And sometimes that opinion results in a bit of a back and forth, and they can be lively and spirited conversations. But know that I don't hate anybody. I have no tolerance for racism. So those are the ones that I'm going to call out. And not just a racist, but a racist comment that may come out of somebody who may not be as devout a racist as their comment might suggest. Sometimes calling people out is a way to make them aware of just how far out they went with, or how far they're starting to go with their philosophies. And believe it or not, there's a few people that when I've called them out and had conversations with them or about them, they've come back around. Most people aren't going to. I mean, the ones that I'm willing to kind of do battle with, those are the guys that are kind of already gone. And my doing battle with those kinds of voices, like the ones that weighed in on this issue, my doing battle with them is not for their benefit. It's for the benefit of other people who see that, no, that kind of bullying is not tolerated, and that we can mount a defense for ourselves and can call them out effectively. So part of the reason I respond to these kind of comments is to show that no, the ignorance being displayed against us is not something that we have no ability to defend ourselves against. So I want to mention that. Hey, I do want to draw attention to my T-shirt. This is my Colin Kaepernick T-shirt. If you see, it's a number 7 with a raised fist, and number 7, that was his jersey number for the last NFL team that he played for, and probably will be the last NFL team that he played for. So again, that's my number 7, fist in the air, Colin Kaepernick T-shirt. So in case you were wondering what that is, that's what I'm wearing. Let me see. Okay. So I talked about the couple of articles that showed up in the Niagara Reporter, and again, what Mike Hudson had written about was it was actually a Facebook post that I had put up in response to, and I'm not sure if it was a Gazette or a Buffalo News article, but I had responded to an opinion piece that was written, and part of my response was to really call out the failure of local leadership in, frankly, all 3 of the municipalities who are being strapped for cash because of the end of gaming revenue sharing. But I called them up because the Senecas have put the offer out there. They said, look, let's talk. No, we're not going to pay the state revenue sharing anymore. That ship has sailed. It's done. It was for 14 years. It's over. But we still want to be good neighbors, and certainly any services that you are providing, we want to work out a system that we compensate you for those services, and undertake a service agreement. I mean, this is I want to put more words into this thing, but the Senecas have put an offer out there to address any of the things, any of the expenditures that these municipalities incur because of the gaming facilities. And the Senecas have put an offer out there to talk about more than that, possibly joint venturing on economic development or doing some sort of, cost sharing on something. So the Senecas have put the offer out there. Nobody came. The phone hasn't rung. And part of it is because all 3 municipalities, Niagara Falls, Buffalo, and Salamanca, have lined up behind the governor on this thing. And that's really their failure. I mean, because even if you think the governor may succeed in arbitration, which he won't, you would think you would just want to hedge your bets and say, well, the sooner I get to the table with the Senecas, instead of, spiting them by standing with the governor, if the governor prevails, we're going to get money. We're going to get that 25% of the billion that the state will get, $1 billion plus. So we don't have to do anything there. But if the governor's not successful, we might be better off. I mean, you would think at least the Republicans in these regions would say, you know what, we're not going to stand with the governor. He's the other party. We're gonna acknowledge that the Senecas may be right on this thing, and we're gonna sit with them and see what we can work out for the benefit of our territories, of our communities. But no, none of that's happened. So that's essentially what my opinion piece that was in the Reporter communicated, and that's what Mike Hudson wrote about using my quotes for. I wrote another piece, and it took a few days for it to finally get into the Buffalo News, but it came out today. So if you get a chance to look at today's Buffalo News and you go to the opinion page, I don't know, it's in the first section. It's the Another Voice column that I've written, and what I wrote this time was not just about the failure of local leadership, but the point that I was trying to make is, how is it that no one has acknowledged that the money that left this region, not the money that came back to the municipalities, but the money that never came back, which is significant. It's over $1 billion that the Senecas have paid the state for this exclusivity that never really existed, but over $1 billion that never came back. In fact, $1.5 billion went to the state, $400 million came back. So $1.1 billion was sucked out of the area, out of the region. I mean, let that settle in for a second. So $1.1 billion over 14 years left Western New York. I mean, that has impact, folks. I mean, and that's what I wrote the column about. Well, and what the heading, the title they gave my column said, the end of revenue sharing is actually good for the area or something like that. I think that's something along those. It's good for the region. My headline was, "Can't somebody do the math?" That's the headline that I wanted, and that I suggested. But that's okay. I like their headline too. But the point was, if you, I mean, there's got to be an economist, a student studying economics or whatever else who could run the numbers. But if $1 billion leaves the area, even if a certain amount of money came back, and my story was really based on Buffalo more so than Niagara Falls, because here's the thing, and this is another thing that people just don't factor in, especially again, Erie County and Byron Brown, the mayor of Buffalo. Most of the gaming dollars is coming from Erie County and the Buffalo area. Let me say it again. Most of the gaming dollars. I mean, Niagara Falls is the Seneca Nation's flagship casino. It's in a tourist destination. It's in Niagara Falls. But it isn't Niagara Falls residents that are the bulk of those patrons there. Most of the money, even going into Niagara Falls, into the Seneca Niagara Casino, are Erie County residents. They're Buffalo residents. Even the Allegheny, the Seneca Allegheny Casino. A lot of the money that's going in there is not coming from Cattaraugus County or Chautauqua County. It's coming from Erie County. So, and who's getting who had been receiving as far as the local municipalities? Obviously, the state gets a lion's share, $1.1 billion. But $250 million came back not to Buffalo, not to Erie County. It came back to Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls actually gets a disproportionate amount, has been getting a disproportionate amount of the gaming money that comes back to municipalities, because the numbers are based on the slot drop. It's not based on whose purse the money came out of. It's not based on what individual played. It's based on the machine that it was played in. So Niagara Falls got $250 million over 14 years. And what do they got to show for it? So the point of my article, especially for Buffalo, was, man, you guys should be happy this thing has ended. You've had $1 billion sucked out of Buffalo, out of the Buffalo region, over 14 years. Everybody wants to talk about the Buffalo billion and all the stuff that Andrew Cuomo is doing for Buffalo. Yeah, but you're not going to factor in the fact that Andrew Cuomo took $1 billion away. Then you're not doing proper math here. You're not doing a full calculation. I would argue that the $5 million or $6 million that was coming back to Buffalo annually is a net loss when you factor in the $120 million that was leaving the area each year. That is money that does not circulate in the economy anymore. And and you could argue, yeah, but the Senecas don't pay taxes. You know what? The Senecas may not pay taxes, but they buy in Western New York. Every dollar that goes into the Seneca Nation goes right back into the local economy, except the $1.1 billion that went to Albany. That does not come back to the local economy. And the state can say, well, yeah, we do plenty for Buffalo. Well, yeah, but it had nothing to do with that $1 billion. And if it did, then you need to tell people that. You need to say, we gave that $1 billion back. The Senecas actually put $1 billion back into Buffalo. The state didn't do it. And you're not going to do that, because that doesn't get you elected, does it? My column, and look for it. It's in the Buffalo News. As it's not on the electronic versions yet, so I'll post it. I did post I did a screenshot of the article, and I posted it, and I look forward to your comments. And that's the thing that I must say, I do look forward to your responses. I mean, if you agree with me, great. Perhaps if you agree with me, you'll take some of that information, and that'll become part of your dialogue as you have conversations with folks. If you don't agree with me, then by all means, give me some feedback. I'm not looking for another racist argument with somebody, but if you don't agree with me, then make a compelling argument for what I got wrong. But I will say that you cannot suggest that $1 billion leaving this area over 14 years. Sometimes as high as, I mean, it was almost $200 million for in some of the good years. $200 million in a single year. If you take that out of a region's economy, and understand that that was income that came out of individuals. And when the Seneca Nation makes, even the money that the Seneca Nation makes, if it doesn't get spent immediately by the Seneca Nation, it goes back out in payouts. It goes into employee salaries. It goes to individual Senecas who shop locally. That money circulates if it isn't sent in a big check to Albany. So my point is, now that this revenue sharing has ended, it is going to have positive economic impact. No, you're not going to get, Byron Brown, you're not going to get a $6 million check from the state. But think about the impact of having that 120 to 150, $200 million a year staying in the region. I would argue that it may be a net gain, even if you didn't get any revenue sharing back. And the fact of the matter is, if one of you three mayors would grow enough courage, you would sit with the Senate and say, all right, let's work out a service agreement. Let's see what we can come up with. And maybe it's not going to be, $5 or $6 million to Salamanca and Buffalo. And it certainly isn't going to be, 15 to 20 million to Niagara Falls. But it might be a piece of that back. And when you factor in 120 to $200 million a year staying in the region to recirculate back into the economy, you might be made whole in a completely different way. We're not talking about trickle-down economics here. We're not talking about a rich guy sitting on a pile of money. This is the Seneca Nation that is fully engaged in the commerce of Western New York. They aren't they are putting their money into the stock market. They are funding programs that involve vendor contracts. They are funding employees that are they're taking a salary and spending it right back in the area. This is the stuff that nobody and it's almost, I guess I'm almost amazed that nobody's had this conversation. So this is the first time this conversation has been raised in this way. Now, don't get me wrong. There's been plenty of the Seneca Nation documenting, the economic impact they have had with their salaries and wages, with their vendor contracts, with not just with the revenue sharing, but the other things they've done in the area, like promoted concerts and monies to hospitals and educational facilities, all kinds of other programs that the Seneca Nation has thrown money into the region beyond the revenue sharing. They have done that. They've documented all that. But what has not been accounted for is the economic impact of that $1 billion that never come back. That $1 billion that went to Albany, that $1.1 billion that nobody here in West New York has any say over. It is literally taken from the region. So that's what my column is about. Take a look at it. Give me some feedback. Share it with people, because maybe this is one of the things that again, when somebody does take the time to think about it, say, you know what, revenue sharing ending is good for the region, and that's what I was basically saying. What I was saying is that the three mayors should be wiping their brow, saying, "Damn, it's good that that's over." That that giant sucking sound of $1.1 billion leaving the area does have a negative impact. And I'm not saying go spend $1 million doing a study on it, but I mean, just do some basic math here. Think about what $1 billion. Trust me, I know there's plenty of Senecas that are saying, "I wish we had that $1 billion back," because the chances are the first bite of that apple was going to be Senecas. Obviously, that was their profit margin. That was their profit. So they lost out on having any use of those funds, that $1 billion. But so did you. So did the entire region. That's $1 billion less in auto purchases and in mall shopping and restaurant eating and grocery shopping and clothes buying. maybe loosening up a machine so they pay out a little bit more, maybe hiring a few more employees that, and again, keep in mind that 90% of the employees that work in the Seneca gaming facilities are non-native, tax-paying, good American tax-paying citizens, paying state tax and federal tax. So yeah, there would have been an increase in municipal revenues if that $1 billion over 14 years had stayed here. I mean, and that should be an easy calculation. Just think about what that would have resulted in terms of purchases and sales tax, property taxes, whatever. But no, and it's, I'm a little surprised. And look, I'm not suggesting I'm the smartest guy in the room. I know, there's only two of us in this room, so I'm one of the smartest guys in this room. But but look, I'm not suggesting that somehow I'm that I'm a genius here. But I gotta tell you, I'm a little surprised that nobody else has made a case for this thing. And I think this is, and there's a reason. There's a reason that nobody's made a case for this. And some of it is just this, again, this unique, and I know people are going to say, oh, no, he's not going to say the R word. Yeah, I'm going to. There's a unique form of racism that, applies to Native people, that is imposed on Native people. And part of that racism is to not give us any credit for anything, is to not acknowledge any of the positive attributes. That's why your history is skewed the way it is. You don't learn about, there's actually a whole line of study called the Columbian Exchange, they actually call it. Yeah, crazy. They have to associate it with Columbus. Yeah, the Columbian Exchange. And what it suggests is all of the things that Columbus and his washing up on the shores of this hemisphere, all of the things that Europe would bring to this continent. And they refer to, that's what it's referred to, as the Columbian Exchange. Now, even though it says exchange, they don't talk about our contributions, the contribution of Native people back to the, to the global community or to European influences. I mean, somebody might mention corn, but I don't know if anybody really ever fully acknowledges how significant some of the Native products, the Native philosophy, so much of our culture, how much it has impacted the world, including this notion of politicians being servants of the people. Yeah, that was kind of our deal. That wasn't yours. You didn't have that. You had aristocracy. You had monarchy. You had rule by force. You had military dictatorships. That was your thing. Our thing was being in the service of your people. Yeah, a little bit different philosophy. People want to associate this age of enlightenment with Voltaire or some of these other philosophers. But you know what? A lot of this stuff was witnessed in play when people came to and saw our people. They said, "Look, we saw a society that maintained order without hierarchy, without kings and queens and prisons and military. Something the world never seen before." And then a few people said, I think what we witness is man in his natural state before man is corrupted by man. And I think that was meant to sound primitive, but in a way it was more enlightening. But anyway, so again, I encourage you to participate, work with me. You got a show topic you wanted me to talk about, and I've got a couple of things. I was talking to my friend Robert, and we're going to talk about the need to get back to some of our traditional philosophies, to bring those forward to today, and how we apply that to the lives we're living now. Not just speak about our culture in romantic terms and a Disney version of who we once were, but how do we bring some of that back? And that is one of the challenges of life. So and that's a suggestion that was made to me. But I look to you. I look to you for suggestions. I look for you for show topics and responses. And again, my appreciation goes to any of you who tag me in a Facebook post or a meme or a story that because you want me to weigh in. And I will. I try to weigh in. There's some that I won't weigh in on, and perhaps I should even weigh in on why I won't weigh in. I don't know, but for the most part, if somebody is going to present an issue to me, I'll give you my take on it, and and you can take it for what it's worth. But again, what I offer up on many of these conversations is really my attempt to engage a conversation and to have a conversation. Again, hey, don't forget we've got what have we got? We got Indigenous and Logan Stats Saturday, November 4th at 8 p.m. at the Bears Den up at Seneca Niagara Casino, and then next Saturday, the following Saturday, November 11th, we got Blackfoot and Jimmy Wolf. So let me go out with a Logan Stats tune, one of my favorites, and this is Simple Man. Thank you. See you on Friday.
It's a simple song, simple man. It's a simple thrift store clothes and a simple thing. He's gonna make it someday. He's gonna make it someday. That was a lifetime ago. A lifetime ago. Lifetime ago. A lifetime ago. A lifetime.